Post-punk is a subgenre of rock that popped up around late 1977 after punk rock made its mark. The whole idea was laid out by John Savage in a Sounds magazine editorial called New Music back in November 1977, but funny enough, the term doesn't have a set definition that everyone agrees on. Essentially, post-punk artists moved away from the straightforward raw style of punk, opting for a more experimental vibe that mixed in all sorts of avant-garde influences and styles that go beyond rock. These artists took inspiration from punk's energy and DIY spirit, but wanted to push past the usual rock cliches. They experimented with sounds coming from genres like funk, electronic music, jazz, and dance, along with production techniques from dub and disco. They also embraced ideas from modern art, cinema, literature, and politics, while creating their own independent record labels, visual art, multimedia performances, and zines. Among the early pioneers of post-punk, only Susie and the Banshees and Public Image Limited really made a commercial splash in 1978, with their first singles hitting the top 10 in the UK. As new wave music grew, different regional scenes emerged across Europe, like the Ultra movement in the Netherlands, Germany's Neue Deutsche Welle, Spain's La Movida Madrileña, and cold wave scenes in places like France, Poland, and Belgium. The early post-punk era also ran parallel to no-wave and industrial music, setting the stage for British new pop and the second British invasion in the US. Plus, it influenced loads of alternative genres like gothic rock, dream pop, shoegaze, and more. By the late 1980s, though, post-punk had largely faded away. Then, in the 2000s, several bands in New York started pulling post-punk inspirations into modern indie rock, leading to a resurgence of dance punk and a post-punk revival. By the 2000s, post-punk acts from Canada, Ireland, Denmark, and the US influenced London's windmill scene and something called crank wave. There was even a brief link to the internet microgenre called Doomer wave, which sometimes tied back to Russian post-punk and darkwave acts in the early 2000s. Around the same time, regional scenes were popping up in places like Russia and Latin America. Post-punk is all about the culture that arose from punk rock back in the late 70s. The term post-punk actually first showed up in a 1976 interview with painter and poet Jack Micheline.